Hi, this is Paul Palmer. I want to talk about the way things change. So, when you set up your change control in your pharmaceutical company, or maybe even before you decide to start the change control, when you think about this is what I want to change, I want to improve this process, for example, and you think, well, how am I going to do it? Well, I'll get 10 companies in, and the consultants can advise me, and I'll use what they give me to work out what I'm going to do. Okay, so you've got no scope. So you get all the people to come in and they give you a different version, each one, of how they could do it. So what do? Well, you choose one that seems to fit with what you want at a price either you can afford, and sometimes it's the one that is the best, but quite rare. But actually, how do you know which one's best? You haven't worked with them yet. You haven't done anything. So when you're working with a new company, I always recommend you do a certain mm, like testing them out. You do like a trial run. Even when I take on new employees, I don't go straight into thinking, well, this is going to be perfect forever. You do your 3 months, 6 months probation, and keep a close eye on what they've been doing. Make sure it's actually benefiting you the way that you were expecting. Now, in a project position, you're making a change. So you're looking at what the people can do, and you've chosen say you've chosen the company based on the commercials, but then you think, well, this is what I want to do in the project, but that doesn't match what they've said. So I'm going to say to them, this is the scope of the project, and they come back and say, well, actually, we can't do that. We can do it this way, and you say, oh, all right then, and you start, and everybody looks at what you're doing, and they start working on the project, and you develop something, and you get a basic running model that you can then share with others to show them what's coming. And they say, oh, that's good. Let's do this, this, and this. So that's the first time you should be reviewing your scope. But often, instead of reviewing the scope, looking at the change control, looking at the actions, looking at the requirements and the pricing, and just say, oh yeah, let's add that in. Because that department wants it. They really deserve it within the company. I know the conversation's probably not going to look like that. It could just be, well, I'm the one that pays the bill, so you're going to do it. And you think, well, why didn't you say that when you were given the money to be able to do the project? And this is how it goes. It follows on, and you learn a bit more, and people come in and they start doing the probably OQ rather than IQ, because the company will do the IQ. And you're making sure it follows the flow and does the whatever it is that it's expecting. And then you get to PQ and you think, well, we've hit the budget. What can we do to bring it down and reduce the costs? Oh well, we'll just have to add to the budget because we've let the scope creep. And that's what we're talking about. Scope creep. If you don't predefine, make sure everybody buys into a project when you're making a change, then you'll get scope creep. Guarantee it. Because people will learn about what you're doing, and you really need to involve them early when you're setting your scope, not after the event, as unfortunately many times I've been involved in. You say, oh, well, this is our team, we're doing it, we'll tell them about it later, and they'll just implement. But they won't. If they're not ready to change, they will not easily implement. So you need to make sure you get a predefined scope that you sign off to, and that the other senior management team, senior exec often signs up to, maybe your CEO even. And make sure you know the scope, the budget that you can apply, and if there's anything else that can be added, if it's like a just in case fund or a this is it and that's what we need to do to cover everything. But you've got to stick to it. If you're buying it from a company, make sure they know fixed price, this is the budget, otherwise you're going to get scope creep. Oh well, because we're doing this and this changes the things, we're going to have to add this extra work on for you. No, make sure it's defined up front. Make sure your in versus your out is set in advance and they know exactly what you're expecting and what they're expected to deliver. So often the best way to do that is look for the functional spec. So you'll have your design spec, they'll have the functional spec, how they're going to deliver it. Make sure it's agreed, go ahead. And that way you'll avoid going over budget and scope creep. That's Paul Palmer. I'll talk to you soon.